Ahem. Let's engage in a short thought experiment, shall we? A little visualization. Close your eyes. Look down. What you see is your rippling abs and massive pecs, a loincloth, and the most comedically beskulled broadsword that gold could buy. In terms of additional clothing, you are wearing what is ostensibly half of a horse for warmth and not much else. Looking up, you see your tribe of equally naked, equally attractive people basically doing what you are doing right now. Standing there in the cold, titties out and shaking. Why? Because about 100 meters away and charging at you, and also frothing at the mouth, is a bunch of rabid lizard men of the Sorgax tribe, who, if I can be frank, you really don't want to lose this fight to. It's implied in many different legends that you've heard around the campfires nearby that the people who get captured by the Sorgax tribe end up being tortured forever in their weird-ass frog temples while this thing stares at you the whole time in order to power their weird-ass magic rituals. Kind of a bummer. You're outmatched and they have whatever the fuck a Forgon is, but it's okay. You have a bunch of mostly naked barbarians with a litany of axes and swords, and you are gonna die soon, aren't you? Well, considering your fellow tribesmen next to you started levitating and turned into an army of small frogs after exploding, while also screaming as loud as he possibly can, that basically is an indicator that the next 2-ish hours of your life are either gonna kick ass, or you're gonna end up in a pit with this guy staring at you for the next 20 or so years while you're tortured forever. Either way, this is life on Argatoria. Hello everyone, my name is Arthur, and due to the success of the Blackout video, I am now going to be doing my own little mini-series on indie war games with fun lore, and today's topic, Argatoria, specifically Argatoria 2nd Edition, which was produced by the lovely people of Spellcrow, which, if you had been playing war games for quite some time now, you would have at least heard of the name Spellcrow. They are a company who, over the last god knows how many years, was able to pump out some of the best-looking resin alternative bits for your 40k and fantasy miniatures on the market, which I think is awesome. So they've decided to finally put their skills to the test, and they decided to make a game, a rank and flank game known as Argatoria. And its influences are pretty obvious, and I really like them. I wanted to cover the wacky, hyper-violent lore of their game, so yeah. Before you ask for full disclosure, they aren't paying me to do this or anything. At most, they just gave me a PDF of the rules for free, which I like. I've bought their models, I like the game, and want more people to see this indie game because, well, they have some spice to them. Anywho, let's get into the game. But first, to guarantee I get paid here, a word from the sponsor. Howdy, fellas. I've been getting into a bunch of different war and skirmish games lately, as you could probably tell by me starting this series. And as you could probably tell furthermore, going back and forth between my local game store with the limited travel space that I likely would normally have would be pretty difficult. I'd have to sort out what miniatures I'm bringing in the various bins and Tupperware containers I had, like some Neanderthal. I mean, honestly, who uses Tupperware containers to transport miniatures? Well, anyway, I use one of my cases from Tabletop Stronghold instead, and my goodness, I never have to take anything out of it. I just pick it up and go. By the way, yes, I said one of mine, as in I have multiple cases. I have two. The MagCase 2.0 for travel, and the 2.0 XL for display and sorting of my painted miniatures, as every time I paint a mini, I put it on there magnetized, and it just looks so nice, all ranked up and so on. So I get to show off all my work to absolutely no one but myself, because no one's allowed in my room. If all of you knew what squalor I lived in, you would judge me. The sturdiest cases I've ever seen made by a single feller in the good old US of A. Not only am I here to promote them as a happy user, I am here to offer you a discount using code BONES25 at checkout. Will give you 25% off whatever order you want to purchase from them, be it a case or their amazing MDF terrain sets, which if you play a lot of war games like me, having extra terrain around is useful. So make sure to pick up something from Tabletop Stronghold and join my Discord after getting your case or whatever, and show me the minis that you've got stacked in it. I'd love to see them, and be sure to add me once you're in there. I promise I won't be horrendously mad at all. Anywho, thanks to Tabletop Stronghold for sponsoring this video, and let's get back into the world of Argatoria. The world of Argatoria is a vast and violent one. Think the worlds of Robert E. Howard, and you have yourself something akin to Argatoria, though it also has a lot of familiar faces to it. It's like if Conan was also Warhammer Fantasy. The orcs are green, the beastmen exist, and most importantly, everyone has chiseled abs and their tits are out. So, let's give a brief overview of the lore as to how the creation of the lands known as Argatoria were, because prior to that, they were simply referred to as the Beast's Wastelands. This area is known for being particularly horrible, with only the hardiest of people ever being able to eke out any level of existence. Thus, the Dragus tribe is the focal point of our narrative here. These individuals were a large group of humans, and by large I mean both in quantity, but they were also like 6 feet tall on average and very physically strong. They were a disparate and mostly chaotic tribe who, from a young age, are taught to capture and mount massive beasts to ride into battle. As you could tell by the name, the Beast's Wasteland is filled with them. As you would expect, that is also something very common in the setting, to find things that are not horses being mounted by things that are not people. Regardless, the head of this tribe, the thing keeping it in check, is a man by the name of Thargan, whom, with his adopted daughter Argatea, ended up ruling the tribe with benevolence and a tight grasp. He was brave, cunning, especially violent, and probably one of the best warriors in the era at the time. But the problem is, all people, no matter the age, the talent, and what have you, are susceptible to poison, not of the body, but of the soul. See, members of the Dragus tribe had become corrupted. To the north of the wastes is the cities of Sheol Morg. Think of them as the evil warriors of the setting, where you have a lot of influences from stuff that was also in Conan, but a little bit of chaos taint from 40k and Warhammer Fantasy, though I could be wrong on that end. They are mostly just Norse Vikings with horn helmets, undead beastmen, and just a bunch of weird nasty monsters. But the biggest and the scariest thing involving them is that they infect an area like a disease. See, members of the Dragus tribe decided to move from their homes on the Dragon Hills to a more comfortable location, which was to the south. Less cannibal tribes, less giant dinosaurs, dragons, so on and so forth. Pretty great idea in most climates, but something about the beasts of the north and the environment itself protected them from this corruption. This was simply referred to as the darkness, and it permeated the tribe slowly, with some major members of the Dragus tribe beginning to spread dissent between its members against Thargan and his rule. The tribe became a bit more fractious by the day, but through his might alone, Thargan was able to hold the tribe together, but it could only last for so long. And after a great and terrible battle led by Thargan, as he was that kind of guy to lead from the front, he, wishing to return home to his tribe, his daughter, and regain his strength for whatever battle would happen next, was tricked by the members of his tribe that had fallen to the corruption present in the darkness. See, Thargan was killed by this ambush, if you could call it that. More just a mercy killing. And his daughter now is, not safe. She kind of realized that Sheol Morg probably doesn't have the most progressive ideas about women, and thus decided to fuck off to the most dangerous areas she knew, but also the one that she was most familiar with and could likely survive there where others would fail. The Dragon Hills of the Beast's Wasteland, which, weirdly enough, was a really good idea due to them being seemingly immune or at least resistant to the corruption of the darkness. And it's also good because this is where Argatea, the adopted daughter of Thargan, lived off the land, becoming what would be likely considered one of the greatest and mightiest hunters of the era, let alone making her one of the best warriors off rip. But this is where something kind of happens, a bit of an interesting plot twist. If you're familiar with your Robert E. Howard, specifically the Conan myth, Conan the Barbarian had once fallen into this massive pit during one of his adventures. He had fallen into the tomb of an ancient Atlantean general, which is totally not actually the precursor character that Robert E. Howard was writing about, called Kull the Atlantean. Totally not. It was just some Atlantean general. That's it. But yeah, in the hands of this guy's corpse was a perfectly pristine, mega sharp, super amazing ultra sword. And this sword is the one that you see Arnold Schwarzenegger swinging in the movies. God, I love Conan lore. Regardless, something like that happened to Argatea, and this is where things kind of turn around and we get to the second half of our story. So let's get back to her and see exactly what she discovered, I think. It wasn't a sword that she got, it was, actually electricity. Upon landing in a room with languages that no one on her land could have ever spoken, to her knowledge, she found a corpse resting on a throne in the center of the room. Being wary of the bad vibes in the air, Argatea, using a stick, ended up poking said corpse, but joke's on her, that did not help. Something on the corpse shot out, an electrical impulse blasted her into unconsciousness, and with that, she was different. She awoke to a world where she was very much more intelligent, more capable, able to process things at light speed. It's like she just took a fistful of Adderall and was ready to take on the world. With this, she hatched one hell of a 3-step plan to take back the Dragus tribe, kill as many beastmen as humanly possible along the way, and also make a name for herself. Step 1. Go to the Dragon Hills and find the biggest dragon possible and wrestle it into submission, which, with a degree of ease that we should all, to some degree, find unnerving, she accomplished. So now, Argatea, on enough magical uppers to have her be seeing through the boundaries of reality, was able to go through the boundaries of the game as well, because she ended up getting the largest red dragon ever, apparently, and now is just a walking raid boss. So yeah, let's go to step 2. Gather allies. Now, she wasn't just going to intimidate people with the gargantuan size category dragon she had. No, she went to the old cannibal tribes that had gone unmolested over the last couple decades after the Dragus tribe moved out. See, she had a lot of enemies, but, you know, enemy of my enemy is my friend and all that. So because her dad was no longer there, they ended up getting quite large in her absence. So showing up to the biggest one, she went to the biggest tribe leader that was there and offered a challenge. If I win in this fight to the death, I get your tribe for the upcoming battle. If you win, you get the dragon. And, you know, also glory. So she fought him to the death, easily winning, ate his heart in front of the whole tribe, and the majority of the tribe wasn't even mad that he was dead. They thought that was the sickest shit they'd ever seen and vowed to fight with her until the day they died. She did something like that for pretty much every tribe that she could find in a short period of time, uniting them to her side, even getting some obscure race of bird beastmen known as Vorax. They're basically a super distrustful race of individuals that live in the mountains, and they hate any faction that isn't in fact a Vorak. They saw how sick Argatea was at killing things and how, you know, Sheol Morg kind of blows, so they decided to fight alongside her during the massive war to come, and because of her lasting impact on their race and species, they actually learned to trust humans after the war, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. There was one hitch in this plan as we get to the final step of it, which is, okay, while she was amassing her army, Argatea's journey motivated the remaining members of her tribe that were under the thrall of the Sheol Morg, who had not fallen to the darkness, to kind of raise some sort of minor rebellion. Now, this ended poorly. Think coughing baby versus hydrogen bomb, but it was because of her brazen attitude and army of cannibals and birdmen that they ended up doing it, and it ended up with them getting completely just shit stomped into the dirt. But there's a symbol here. This spurred Argatea to fight harder because she realized that the Dragus tribe still stood strong. Even if they died, they would have rather died a warrior's death than serve the Sheol Morg any longer. It just took a little bit of a reminder. So, this is where we get to the final step. Step 3, war. So, wartime happens, and what do you know? Sheol Morg has corrupted damn near every major tribe in the area outside of the ones that were sided with Argatea. And they also have one hell of a massive army from the cities that they had back in their main place, you know, Sheol Morg. It's really weird. Sheol Morg is the name of the city, but Sheol Morg is also the name of the faction. I guess it's common, and I don't know, it's rough for my brain because I'm kind of dumb like that, but whatever. Now, the fight wasn't exactly even. See, Sheol Morg had tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands, and Argatea had thousands, which, you know, she's got also a gigantic fuck-off dragon, but whatever. The fight that ensued was legendary, as each horde clashed against each other, and to her credit, she almost won, but they were getting pushed back into a dangerous position. Even her dragon got murked, which sucks, because dragons are actually really cool if you didn't know. As they were getting pushed back, something miraculous ended up happening. Almost as a response to Argatea's will, thousands of wild and gigantic beasts from the Beast's Wasteland appeared behind the enemy lines and decided to just rip them to pieces. Shit was looking like hamburger meat afterwards. It is believed that whatever was going on with Argatea Argatea and the magic lightning and the super Adderall beams was causing this, but it also could just be the land itself responding to the will of the people. Regardless, with the aid of nature itself, Sheol Morg's armies were routed, and they ended up going back to their dark and evil city. And it led to Argatea and her forces winning the fight. Whatever happened to Argatea after this point is actually a mystery, as she disappeared. Many say she died in the battle, a warrior's death. Some say she simply disappeared into the reforming tribes as a human to lead it on to be one of the superpowers we know and love today. And fun fact, all of the tribes that are there have some kind of theme that is represented by Argatea. But regardless, we may never truly know. But what is to be known is that in honor of her strength, her prowess, and her work to drive back Sheol Morg from the Beast's Wasteland, the majority of the land was renamed, at least, the island, continent, whatever, was renamed to Argatoria. Yeah, you're probably wondering why the names sounded similar. Yeah, they were named after her. And thus, this is the backdrop. The Sheol Morg are starting to advance back into the lands of Argatoria to bring everybody to heel under their dark thrall. And the many different tribes that have risen to power, although are significantly more strong and devoted than the tribes back then, they hate each other more, and they're significantly more fractious, meaning they're less likely to work together, which means the armies that Argatea had are not really possible right now. It's a simple plot with a lot of room to wiggle, with a lot of people who are quite muscular running around swinging at lizard men and orcs. Oh, and speaking of, there's a bunch of new threats that landed on the island, planet, whatever. And one is from the land of Reptos, which is a newly emerging continent, a newly emerging power, I should note. If you couldn't tell by the name, it's the land where reptile people are from, as well as Forgon. I gotta admit, I really love the Forgon model. If I didn't choose the faction I did, I was gonna either go with Aerox or Sorgax, and they have the lizards, whatever. But basically, they moved to Argatoria thinking that the old races like humans and so on were inferior and needed to be removed. There's also the Ersael, who are orcs, but we'll get to that. So from here, let's cover the major tribes. You can play in the game, discuss the basics and differences between them, so that if you wanted to get into the game, at least narratively, you could pick some up aesthetically. So, let's get to the human tribes, because of the ones that you could probably easily understand. Starting with the one I personally like the most, the Villainous. Do you guys ever just not care? You guys the type to one-trick barbarian in D&D like me? You ever just want to play a 100% chaotic neutral faction in a game and just not give a shit about the political bonds around the world? Yeah, the Villainous are there to hold you tightly. All they care about is fighting, fucking, and the glory therein. They are bathed in red and believe that no man should bow down before any gods they cannot see. They believe in the strength of steel and the power that comes from self-determination. Very Conan shit. They fight for what's theirs, and when there's something that isn't theirs, well, if there's glory to be got and it's obtaining, then yeah, they go for it. They paint themselves red and tattoo their bodies red to represent the legend in their tribes that a child baptized in blood from a young age will be granted incredible strength, and once every generation, one of these children will become a great ruler, so great that they will lead into a bright and noble future. Greater conquest, greater control, and greater domination. The next human tribe is kind of the exact opposite. They're called the Durandus, and they are the opposite end of the spectrum that the Villainous are. They are lawful neutral and believe in being as afraid of the gods as humanly possible for the sake of your own survival. See, in Argatoria, their original tribes were settled by warrior priests from the north, allegedly. It's led to their founding principles being that with each new settlement, they beseech one of the pantheons of the old gods they worshipped. One so old that no one can place their origin truly. The reason being is that in Argatoria, miracles are actually a goddamn tangible thing. They are 100% a valid strategy to get something you want, either a blessing, a boon, or a bane to someone else. Though their tangibility does imply that there are greater beings out there watching people do sick shit on this continent, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are gods or let us know what exactly they are. So, I don't know, just pick a god and pray. And the Durandus take that mentality very fucking seriously. They follow the tenets of the old god's rules, and depending on which settlement you go to, you have to follow the rules of said old god. You know, yeah, as long as you follow them, you're fine. They're actually quite reasonable as far as the barbarian clans that exist in Argatoria. You can actually trade with them, have a pleasant conversation with them, but if you break their divine rules, then you may be labeled an infidel and immediately torn apart by a roving gang of barbarians and backwoods wolfmen. They actually psych themselves up into such a religious frenzy on the battlefield that they are almost more berserking than the Vayandral most times, which is kinda cool. Their key color is blue, representing the hearty land and the hardships that they have to overcome in order to exist as they live in the colder areas of the Beast's wastelands. And it also represents their covenant with their gods. The Gaeldor are the last of the truly human tribes, and they are weird. I guess, no more weird than the other ones. So once upon a time, a group of the OMORI ended up trying their best to take over this ancient-ass place known as the Agalok Forest, which, if you're familiar with Athelloren in Warhammer, you'll be right at home here. This place tore those OMORI fellers apart, but from their more resilient members and refusal to leave, they formed their own tribe, a new one that decided perhaps a more peaceful relationship with nature is the best way to go about things. Thus, symbiosis was achieved, and thus the Gaeldor were born. They protect the forests and have a love of nature and its beauty, but once again, Athelloren. Anyone who would do harm to the forests are usually torn apart by massive spiders, or beautiful women riding massive spiders. One of the two. Their key color is green, and their tattoos represent that. Though, apparently, a lot of people go into Agalok to find ancient relics and wells of power similar to the one that Argatea, methinks, was using in order to get that super Adderall mega boost that she had before. And the Gaeldor do not take kindly to people invading their forests. Again, for the third time, say with me now, Athelloren. It's actually becoming harder and harder for them to stay put, and increasingly they are leaving the forest to fight back those who would seek to invade, and those are the human factions. So let's get into the mostly non-human or evil factions, but let's start with the Lizardmen factions now, as I think they are some of the most interesting models that you can play in this game. If you look at their sculpts, you'll find one that you really, really like. Starting off, we have the Sorgax. Outside of the main villain factions in the game, you probably really don't want to fight these guys. The Sorgax are calm, collected, and quiet, as they are of every single tribe on Argatoria, most likely not to trade or contact anyone that isn't a part of their own tribe. They are very cold, very quiet, and seem to act more like just pure reptiles than any true sentient race. But the big thing about them is that they are incredibly smart. They have a plan and they refuse to ever deviate from it, never going into a battle rage and instead battling with this detached thousand-yard stare that people find quite unnerving. If you fight the Sorgax, you really don't want to lose, as the rumors claim that in their huge swath of temples they have a very unnervingly large amount of slave pens where the captured warriors that they have taken from raids and wars and so on are tortured for their dark magical rituals. So yeah, don't fucking fight them if you can't help it. The other lizard faction you can play are the Aarocs. Now, originally, this illustrious breed of lizardmen who ruled a large swath of Reptos were known as the Axar, but due to them at the time being incredibly berserking maniac lizardmen, they kind of... Okay, a thing that a lot of people don't like to acknowledge in 40k fantasy and every other setting I know out there is that, yeah, sure, being a berserking lunatic is cool and all, but, having no concept of self-preservation does eventually lead to you not being able to preserve yourself. So eventually they found themselves on the back foot because, the rest of Reptos was kind of getting sick of their shit. So they ended up getting pushed further and further back, and then finally the last son of the House of Axar went on an almost holy pilgrimage. He went to one of the holy mountains for their religion, and up there he began to write, and the writing process that he did was to write a set of commandments, set of rules that the Axar Exar needed to follow if they wanted to ever fully recover from this deep pit that they were digging themselves into. So, what did he do? He came back with these rules that the Axars follow almost as if they are holy doctrine that is unbreakable. And in honor of him, they changed their name from the Axars to the Aarocs, and this is the faction we have now. A bunch of very controlled berserkers who know not to lose their temper all the time, but there's conditions that if they're allowed to, they do. You now know of the Lizard Man factions, so now it's time to talk about the villains of this setting and wrap things up. The first and the one we haven't touched upon yet are the Ursael, and the keyword here is Sael. Sael is an ancient-ass orc who was apparently so cool and so bloodthirsty that the majority of the elven races out there were terrified of him, so they had to work together to slaughter him and his tribe. It was an amazing war that lasted very, very long, many years, but Sael ended up slowly losing. Here's where things get a bit weird, because if you're familiar with the lore of World of Warcraft, you know about Gul'dan and that whole deal gone bad, but comically enough, it was the humans here that ended up Gul'daning these orcs. See, humanity saw how fucked up powerful the elves were getting, so they decided to, give the orcs a bit of a boost to help them push back the elves. So they had taught the orcs of Sael's horde something they didn't know yet: magic, thus turning the tides and thus pushing the elven advance back. But this had a byproduct of the orcs immediately turning to evil demon magics, and also Sael ascending to some kind of giant demon prince? Weird. And thus the Ursael were born, the largest and most evil tribe of orcs in the setting, and also the name Ursael translates to the pride of Sael. Cool, right? Last but not least, the faction I play, and the one I like most, the Xial Morg. These are the bad guys of the setting. They are pretty similar to that of the Chaos Marauders from Warhammer Fantasy, but they are pretty fun and pretty unique in their own right. In their own way, they are very different, as they do have a bit of a weird balance to them. See, the 4 dark gods they worship, which they're exactly what you think they are, god of disease, rage, debauchery, and lies, they're actually all siblings, and they were born from the same cosmic entity, I guess. There is a 5th dark god that we don't know about, and it'd be really funny if its name was Malice, but whatever. The original Xial Morg tribes fought each other in the name of their specific god, but in order for them to spread their devotion and not just eat each other alive, they had to learn to chill the fuck out and work together to balance all 4 quadrants of this demonic worship. They are all just that as well. Just a war machine that wishes to spread. They are a curse, a disease on the land that wishes to infect the minds of those around them in order to make more of them and swell their ranks. Fear and hate is their main gimmick, but they also have such a diverse roster. Beastmen, humans known as horned warriors, skeletons, zombies, a hydra or 2. Good times. Alright, fellas, this is where we have to wrap things up, and I gotta say, I'm impressed with what I see. The quality of the sculpts is a bit off the charts, especially for how small they are. It's very potent. They are all cast resin and they ooze character. The storyline takes beats from a lot of my favorite works of fiction, and I gotta say, it's fucking lovely. There's the obvious inspiration from the Conan lore from Robert E. Howard and the stuff they're in. There's some Warhammer thrown in, some classic literature, some fun little references to pulp comics from the golden age of comics, and after playing it with my roommate, I gotta say, it's also very fun to play. It's a simple rank and flank with a lot of, character to it. Then that's one of the main reasons why I would highly recommend actually playing this game. Argatoria is a very characterful game that seems to have gone under the radar, but if you are the type to collect miniatures that have a lot of fun bits and bobs to them and play a game that is relatively simple with a lot of depth to it, then you should play Argatoria. The miniatures are cheap and they often give you a bunch of freebies whenever you order from them. So if you're ever in the mood to pick up a new full-on war game, I'm gonna put the link in the description for their site and you should check them out. Again, I'm not sponsored by them. I just genuinely like what they got going on and I want to cover more alternative war games. And if you pick anything up, let me know, especially if you decide to enter the Discord server, which also linked in the description. Also, I'm saying that a lot. Remember to like and subscribe because, it helps the channel. Remember to comment what games you'd like to see in the future on this little series that I'm going to be doing once a month. But yeah, special thanks to my channel members for supporting me. With your help, I am able to do this as a job and live out my dreams, pay my editors, survive this harsh winter with the comfort of knowing I'm not going to die in the cold. Thank you so much for your help, and thank you all once again for watching. And until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful night.